You're listening to America's Web Radio on the AmericasBroadcastNetwork.com. Thank you for listening. You're listening to America's Web Radio on the AmericasBroadcastNetwork.com. Thank you for listening.
Hey, I feel all right now.
Hey, I feel all right now.
Do you feel like I do right now?
Do you feel like I do right now?
Motivated,
Motivated,
sky high, rock steady,
rock steady.
oh yeah,
Oh yeah,
I can do it,
I can do it.
you can do it,
You can do it.
hey yeah,
Hey, yeah.
oh man.
Oh,
Okay, that can mean only one thing with a cadence call like that. I love my Jodies. And anyway, it's time for David's Pick on America's Web Radio, and we appreciate you tuning in today for our very special guest. And it's retired Colonel Lee Ellis, Jr. And Lee's been on before, and we wanted to have him back. The response was great the first time Lee was on. And welcome back to America's Web Radio, Lee.
Thank you, David. Good to be with you.
Well, it's, we love our veterans here at America's Web Radio and appreciate the service and what you all did. And as we go forward, want to remind everybody that the show is sort of dedicated to the Georgia Military Veterans Hall of Fame, which is downtown Atlanta, right across the street from the Capitol in the Floyd Building. And also the JC, that's Johns Creek Healing Wall, which is the 50% replica of the Vietnam Veterans Wall in Washington, D.C. And it's open. You can go out there 24/7 and take a look at it. And they are going to be building a kiosk very shortly where you can type in a friend or a relative's name and find out exactly where it's located on the wall. And Mike Mazzell is the president of the Johns Creek Vietnam Veterans Association. He's done a fantastic job in Johns Creek in getting the wall up and doing other stuff. We got a surprise coming up very shortly that we'll be announcing. And then also, I have to, if I had, well, some people think I don't even have one head, but if I had two or three, I know that I'd tip all the hats off to Rick White, who is the executive director of the Georgia Veterans Military Hall of Fame. And Rick just does a wonderful job and puts up with me calling and harassing him about guests and so forth. But Rick is a fabulous man and just does one heck of a job. And all of us do it for you so we don't forget our veterans. And our flag and the United States of America. We're going through some times now, and I generally don't get too political on this particular show, but we're going through some times now where another country, another political group, or whatever you want to call them, is very stealthily trying to take over our government and take over our country. And I know that most of the veterans that I do know are standing up to this, and they will stand up to it. We're not going to give our government up. We're not going to give our country up for anything. And I don't know of a veteran that I've talked to that if the situation came about that they wouldn't re-enlist in a heartbeat and do what they had to do to protect our country. So with that being said, again, Lee, thanks for coming back on. You know what it is to live under communism. You know what it is to have been I guess you were a registered guest at the Hanoi Hilton, correct?
Yes, I was registered. At least I had a number. They gave me a pair of black pajamas and a T-shirt. It was kind of like a doctor's or nursing smock and a pair of shorts. But they put numbers on all of them, and my number was TU390. So I guess that registered me right there in the Hanoi Hilton which also is our name for Poilot, which is the French prison built in the 1890s. It was a Bastille prison, and we survived it. Most all of us did, and came home after years.
I have a friend, Dr. Larkin, that Obama put in our jail, and he was Terry Lakin. I said Larkin, Lakin, and Terry served 6 months, but he wrote about it, and I can be claustrophobic on my own house, much less something like the Hanoi Hilton or even busting rocks in Kansas. And Terry was totally mistreated by Obama and the Obama administration, but he wrote about the fact that everything was fine until night, and he'd hear the doors lock, and when he heard that click of the door locking, he knew he was there until morning and wasn't going anywhere. And you must have experienced some of the same thoughts and pains that Terry did.
Yeah, that's one thing. When you've been locked up like that, you don't forget. It's the sound of those big old keys rattling, and especially if it's at a time that is not normal, of the normal administrative day. We had to go out in the mornings and empty our bucket. We didn't have a bathroom. We had a 3-gallon bucket, and thank goodness it had a lid. Empty that bucket, or to pick up our bowl of rice and soup twice a day. Otherwise, it was probably not going to be fun if the keys were rattling, and if they opened your door, and those noises carry well in those old buildings, and that could make your stomach start running like rats running around in your stomach when you heard those keys rattling and got closer, and then they opened your door, and it wasn't the normal time to go do something. You knew it was probably going to be an interrogation. You didn't know when you were going to come back. So that was a pretty exciting time, and probably about as much fear as, you want to have.
So what... I know you all were, or I say you all, the other prisoners, you and the other prisoners communicated with the tap code and so forth, but if you had one thing that got you through it, what would it be?
Well, I'd say, first of all, my faith was very strong. It's one thing to feel like you're in control of day-to-day life, but when you're actually depending on your enemy for your food and shelter, the same ones that are torturing you, but you're also depending on them for your food and shelter, you know that you're not in control of very much at all, and you start looking up. And I had a strong faith going in, but that was, when I didn't get killed in the ejection and the capture process and the trip north to Hanoi, where I was the victim of several riots trying to get to me, unfortunately I had a good soldier and his squad protecting me. But when I made it through that, I decided, kind of like Ronald Reagan when he got shot, that God's got something else for me to do. I'm still here, so now my job is to do my duty and to be a good soldier, be an honorable soldier, and survive this thing, and do the very best I can to do that and do my part. And so that's kind of the attitude or philosophy I operated on, and I think most of the guys did, is we made it. A lot of our friends didn't make it. So many of them didn't, and we knew that we still were alive, and we had to stay in the battle. Our warfare had changed. Combat for us had gone from being air to air and air to ground to being face to face, and so it was just a different war. And so, but my faith was really the most important thing. Secondly, I think just being trained in the military and having a military mind and being committed to that was very important. Third would obviously be the great leadership we had there, and that's what I wrote about it in my 2012 book, Leading with Honor, is the principles of leadership I learned there. So we really learned a lot. And then the team, just having camaraderie and teamwork, even though it was all covert and they tried to isolate us, we fought hard to stay connected. So those were some of the key things that enabled me to hang in there and make it through.
You know, I'm a believer and certainly believe in the faith to go forward, but and I don't mean to be questioning your faith at all, but under those circumstances, there had to be a why me God, and I would think. But if you got past that and didn't question and just went on faith, then he meant to take care of you, and he was going to take care of you, and it was just a matter of whether it's today or tomorrow, and that he gave you the strength to make it from day to day. And I think you're a good man, and I assume that you feel that way every day right now.
I do. If you, whatever your faith is, I think it's always a battle to actually live it, especially when you have a faith, that's based around, I'm a Jesus follower, I guess you'd say,
Mm-hmm.
and is to honor God, to love God, and to love your fellow man. And that really encompasses everything. But that is not easy. We're human beings, and we're living in this world of temptation, battles, pleasure, fun, work, responsibility, all of that. And so, it's a battle every day, and I engage in that battle, and some days I do better than others. But I'm just thankful to be alive and to be able to engage. And I think we realized that we were alive, and we could have been dead so easily. I mean, you jump out of an airplane over enemy territory. Well, first of all, jumping out of an airplane going 400 or 500 miles an hour.
Yeah.
A lot of guys got broken up badly, and they didn't have any real medical care until we came home. I mean, they just healed. Wow. There were a few guys that were really in bad shape that were probably not going to make it if they hadn't done something. So they did a little something, but they didn't fix them up, and they had to get surgery and get fixed up when they came home. There were guys up there that had either broken bones from their ejection or got shot in the ankle or leg or somewhere in being captured, whose wounds oozed little pieces of blood, pieces of bone, and infectious stuff for years. And yet they made it and came home. One of my buddies, his leg was 2 inches shorter than right leg was 2 inches shorter than the left one, and he got home and got some good care and surgery, and they made him a boot that was 2 inches taller, and he put it on and went back to flying.
That's fantastic.
So we learned that the human body is so resilient. I mean, it can die. It's delicate at times, but overall, it is very resilient. And we bounced back from beriberi and just all sorts of wounds and everything. Of course, we were in good health. Now you've got to we were mostly air crews, and to be an air crew, you have to pass a lot of physicals. So we're in pretty good health, and it was kind of a unique crowd in that response, in that regard.
Lee, I need to stop you for just a second and take a break, and it's going to be a live break. In fact, all the breaks will be live during our interview today, and it is just to remind everybody about the Georgia Military Veterans Hall of Fame that's in downtown Atlanta, right across the street from the Capitol. That's the Gold Dome, and it's in the Floyd Building. And if you haven't been there, whether you're from Atlanta or from who knows where in the United States and you're traveling into Atlanta, please take the time to go in there. And like our good friend Colonel White, retired, says, bring your own box of Kleenex. And you'll read stories you may even read some stories about your relatives from Georgia or wherever they happen to be from and were living or lived in Georgia at one time. But it is a very moving thing. And at the same token, your kids need to find out about their relatives. And You just never know who's going to be in that closet when you open the door. And the same way with going to the healing wall in Johns Creek. It's open 24/7. And as I mentioned, they'll be setting up a kiosk that will have a computer and be able to tell you where exactly the name you're looking for is. And both of them. And then there's also Peachtree Creek that has a memorial to Vietnam veterans. And Georgia is doing a lot to support veterans, and we're proud as America's Web Radio to be a part of it. And respect your veterans and respect your people that are the folks that are on active duty, be they first responders, or if you see someone in a military uniform and airport, train station, wherever it might be. If you get an opportunity, say thank you. And if you get an opportunity to buy them a meal, do it. And we need our military, and they need our support today more and more. They are under attack like you wouldn't believe, and it's a shame. They're the ones that keep us free, keep us on the air, and able to talk to you. So with that being said, you know what giving up freedom is, don't you, Lee?
Yes, I do. It's one thing to give up physical freedom, though, but it's another thing to give up your mental freedom. And so, even though we were locked up, we worked hard to stay free in our minds. That we believed. Obviously, we had to deal with the crisis of the moment, so to speak. But we also believed that we had freedom of choice, and we had to make those choices. Sometimes they were very hard choices. Sometimes we had to suffer and pay the price for those choices, but we believed in what we were doing. We believed that was the right thing to do, and we did our best. And, that taught me so much about life that serves me well today. In fact, when I came home from the war, I was, within 6 months, they met a major's board. I was a captain, and they promoted me 2 years early to major, which surprised and almost scared the hell out of me. Actually, I was so happy. I was just, I'd been home just a little while, and I was had just gotten requalified for flying, was about to go to my first real assignment after I got back from the war, and I get a call on Thanksgiving weekend from from an active duty colonel friend of mine who was a POW. He said, "Lee, I just want to let you know, it's still confidential, but it'll be out next week. I was on the major selection board, and we promoted you and a few of the captains early to the rank of major." And I thought, well, thank you, sir. Appreciate that. And, it was just one of those things that it was just so hard to believe. But what I figured out later was, in my career, that the experience I had there that really set me able to what I could do in life and enabled me to be a good leader in the Air Force.
Lee, let me ask you, and I had meant to while we were talking about it just a few minutes ago, but did the interrogators and your enemy try to influence your belief and try to say, oh, well, your God's not going to help you or whatever?
No, what they did was they wouldn't give us the Bible for years, and so that's really all they did. They didn't try to get into that. They were not that sophisticated. They were smart people, but they weren't sophisticated in terms of understanding all that, I think. And they didn't, they were generally didn't believe either. There were a few of them, I'm sure, that were a few Catholics there. There was a French colony, a few Catholics there, but they're more likely to have been Buddhists or something like that, or just atheists. I'm sure the ones that were educated in communism.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Interesting. So, when you got back, was it the United States that you had left?
Well, in some ways yes, and in some ways no, because the culture had kind of gone crazy while we were gone. Remember, I was captured in '67. That was kind of the beginning of the run-up for the late '60s, and the many things that happened during that time when the culture kind of started going a little bit crazy. And so we came home, and there were a lot of things that were quite different that we had to adjust to. And, of course, some of our friends were very anti-war, and, of course, we'd been into war.
Mm-hmm.
But, I think we understood, and we actually defended people's right to be against the war. Our enemy, the communists, would kind of throw that in our face about every day. Well, all these people are against the war. That makes the war wrong, and you should admit that you're a war criminal, and the U.S. is all wrong in all this. And, of course, we would push back and say, well, no, we're a free country. We're allowed, our citizens are allowed to protest the war and disagree with the government, but the government makes policies, and we follow them, and we're military. So we defended their the right of people to disagree with the war, and we kind of moved on from that and didn't worry about it. And the POWs, when we came home, the war was over, and we did not get the bad reception that most veterans got spit on. They couldn't wear their uniform. They were just treated like dirt. The POWs, we kind of went back home to our little town or our base where people knew us, had been praying for us, wearing bracelets with our names on it for all those years. And so we got a good reception coming home. But that helped us a lot, I think, to adjust coming back. So I would say, the culture was kind of a mess. What was so interesting was that people seemed to worry about, well, I only have one color TV, or, my pickup truck is getting old, it's 3 years old, and they're worried about material things that we were just not interested in. And so it just surprised us how materialist people were in those days. And we weren't, because, we could carry everything we owned under our arms during those years, and material things kind of faded off of our radar. So we came home able to live and operate with very few material things. The one big challenge I had was going shopping, because I hadn't shopped in almost 6 years. And so I was overwhelmed the first time I went in to buy cereal and groceries, and like, you've been in the cereal counter lately? No, you look up there, and there's all these brands of cereal. And I got a headache trying to figure out which one to buy. So finally I had to adapt the philosophy of just pick one quickly, don't waste a lot of time, pick one, and if you don't like it, don't buy it again. And that's the way I operate in restaurants or anywhere else. It's not life-changing. It's just one meal, or it's one box of cereal. If you don't like it, buy a different kind next time.
That's great. Do you have kids?
Yes, I do. Well, I got married a year after I got back, and
okay.
My wife had 2 kids, 7 and 5, and then we had 2, so we had a total of 4 and 6 grandchildren.
So do you relate to them as far as what you had been through? Or do you ever talk about it with them?
Well, they know, but, Dad is Dad more than he is a POW or a military guy. Dad is more of a dad.
Sure.
They know that. They've seen people, I've been honored, and I've received a lot of attention because being a Vietnam POW, and they've seen that, and they're impressed by it in a way, but at the same time, the dynamics of our relationship, if you're a teenager, you're going to rebel against your parents. You're going to disagree with them, regardless of whether they're generals or admirals or privates. It doesn't matter to them.
Yeah. Well, it's, do you do a lot of speaking at all?
Yeah, I do. I didn't do any professional speaking really until my 2012 book came out, and then I joined National Speakers Association and became a professional speaker. So I do keynotes around the country. I've done keynotes in Asia. I've spoken on cruise lines in Europe and sailing over there in Asia. But I do a lot of corporate speaking. I do some in the military. So I've become a professional speaker, and now a couple of years ago, after 5 years, I received the Certified Speaking Professional Award, so I have that badge now. So, and that's been a pretty good accomplishment for me, and I enjoy it. I love sharing the message about leading with honor and about the lessons we learned in the POW camps. And what I found, David, is that It doesn't matter if it's teenagers or 100 nurses in the room at a hospital or CEOs and the National Association of Corporate Directors in Washington, D.C. They all enjoy the message and they like the lesson. So it's been a very rewarding experience for me.
So in a Cliff Note version, tell us about leading with honor.
Well, there's
without I don't want you to give away any of the. I want people to buy it and read it, and
right.
I think you had a message on that as well.
Yeah, it has 12 chapters, and each chapter is a lesson. Lesson number 1, chapter 1 is Know Yourself. So I talk about, in every one of those chapters, I tell a war story, and then I have a transition. Here's a lesson about knowing yourself, or guard your character. That's another chapter. Here's a lesson, and then every chapter has that, and then here's how the lesson is being applied in today's workplace. And so I'll tell a story of one of my situations there that it lets them see how that's being applied in today's workplace. And then there's coaching questions at the end of every chapter. So it's a very practical leadership book, but it has a lot of stories, gives you a lot of insights into the Vietnam POW experience.
And again, I don't want to get political or ask you anything that is uncomfortable, but we've said on this show and other shows that with regard to what we're going through right now is on both sides, the terrorists and the politicians. It's my observation that most of them have never been in the military, and on both sides, the experience and the help they could get by being in the military, we wouldn't be facing some of the things that we're facing today. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I think there's just a lot to be said about in the military, about learning your duty and serving your country, and honesty and integrity. Your word is your bond. Those kind of things that would be so good for our culture. And accountability and ownership. I am most worried about in our culture today because I don't think young people have been taught accountability. You see some of the things that are happening on TV. I read where this young 23-year-old guy was attacked a policeman at some demonstration, and he had a fully loaded weapon, and he was biting and threatening the policeman. And I'm thinking, well, how could anybody think they can do that and get away with it? They've never been held accountable. They've never had consequences to their action. I mean, some of the things we see happening in our culture where people are disrespecting others' property and so on, it just shows that they don't fear any consequences. So that's my biggest concern. How can you have law and order if there's no consequences for breaking law and order? How can you do that? I think the military does a pretty good job of teaching that because consequences come quickly.
Mm-hmm.
They should. In fact, one of the things as a leadership coach I have to help certain people understand is you do have to hold people accountable, and when you've done your best to help them succeed and they don't, or if they're acting in a toxic way in the organization, you need to take action to help them get on the right path, get on course, or you need to get rid of them or put the consequences on them so they understand that, when you make choices, the consequences come. They're either good or bad.
This is, and I couldn't agree with you more. I've never seen anything like this, and I was talking to one of the folks here about the fact that in fact I was talking to Dr. Shears that was in doing his show this morning about the same thing, that I would just like to grab one of the terrorists or grab one of the mayors or grab one of the politicians and say, what are you thinking? What good does it do to throw a brick through a car, a cop car, anybody's car? What good does it do to steal? What good does it do to open your city up to crime? And defunding the police. The last thing I want to do is defund the police. I want to give them more. I wouldn't do what they did, and we also support the fact that, just like I said, I feel like everybody should go through the military. At the same token, I feel like everybody, and there's no reason that you don't or you can't, ride with a cop at night. Share a ride with a cop and find out what they really have to go through to protect you and your loved ones and your home and your business and everything else. And we're very much call your police department and set up a schedule to go ride with a cop. And anyway, we're very supportive of them and very supportive of a lawful country, and I'm glad that we have who we have. A lot of folks don't like Trump, but at least he's on the side of law. And these people that are on the side of communism, hopefully they won't get their wish like what's happened in Venezuela. And we're doing a show. We do a show every Thursday afternoon. 1 to 2 is in English and 2 to 3 is in Spanish about exactly what's going on in Venezuela. And let's talk Venezuelan. And we see what happens. They have infiltrated our educational system just like they did in Venezuela. They set up socialism, and I was always taught that socialism was one step away from communism, and Venezuela is certainly proving that. So
yeah, it's a tough situation that people have been inspired to be angry about our country. Of course, they've never lived anywhere else, and they don't really understand it's not perfect. We got problems, but we're working those problems. And in the race issues, I think we're working those very well right now. I know everybody that I know personally is wanting to make that situation better for black people, African Americans, and they're working. They realize that, they have not been treated properly in so many ways. We think they have. White people generally think they have because that's our intention. But the reality is, it's interesting that so much, if you watch the evening news in most any city, local news, you're going to see a lot of negative stuff about black people. And then people wonder why do white people have negative perceptions about black people? Well, the media actually has been painting that for us for many years. So, but the reality is that's not helpful. And so I'm getting together with my black friends, and we're talking through, and I'm listening to what I'm doing. I'm listening to them share with me what they've been through. And I think all white people need to be doing that. But we're all going to have to stand up and take responsibility. The black people for the inner cities, where they have more influence than we do. Us for other areas that have been race problems that white people unknowingly have contributed to. So I think we can work through this. But, rioting and getting revenge and ripping up things and stealing and knocking down and threatening people is not the way to go. And that's the evil portion that's coming alive in our country right now. That's not racism. That's not anything but evil. When you go in and tear somebody else's stuff up, when you threaten people in old ladies and people in wheelchairs, that is nothing but evil. And we need to be clear about what's evil, and both parties, both right and left, need to agree on some things are important and need to be dealt with, but evil is evil,
And I think you saw that in Vietnam.
Yeah.
Many times, more than you would like, and it's. I agree with totally everything that you said, and just as our faith works in many ways, in different ways, in mysterious ways, the other side of the coin is always working against that and trying to stir people up and cause people to lose their faith. And we've got problems, and every country has problems, but like you said, we can overcome those problems, but it starts by you have to be able to communicate. And there's two sides to every coin too, and I agree totally with what you've said. However, I think there's the other side of the coin too. The old saying of give them an inch and they take a mile. Well, there's a disparity on both sides today, and it's that needs to be addressed as well. And we had a Dr. Shears this morning on the Doctor's Lounge did a memorial to Herman Cain, and I had met Herman a couple of times, and obviously I didn't know him well at all, but Dr. Shears does and did, and what he said about him was incredible. And the media gave more attention to John Lewis, and Herman Cain died on basically the same day, and the media gave all the attention to the death of one and no attention to the death of the other. And yet John Lewis, in reality, other than being a politician all of his life, never accomplished a damn thing, whereas Herman Cain, his accomplishments were so many that it was almost hard to list. And one of his biggest was the fact that his belief in that you can do anything you want to do in the United States if you want to bad enough. And that was his goal, and his teaching was that yes, we have some differences, but we can all overcome them and we can do anything that we want to do. And General Dix, that's a friend of ours, he's proven that point over and over again as well. And we just need to come together, as they say.
Yeah, I think we do. But here's the thing right now. I think I do a monthly blog and focused on leadership, and then I do a monthly video coaching. They're both free on our website. And the video is usually 5 or 6 minutes. The last month I only did about 4 minutes, but both of them, they usually go together on the same subject. And in July, I did focus toward race and getting together and listening and becoming aware of what the issues are and working together. But then this month of August, I focused on discernment of the message, because there's some messages out there right now that are very misleading. The message, there's some truth in the message, but there's a big push behind the message that is very insidious and even evil that needs to be sorted out. And so before you jump on board on something, you need to know what is the motivation underneath, a little bit of truth, and then all this other emotional message. You got to make sure you understand. In the communist prison camps, they were always throwing us propaganda 3 times a day. Every cell has a speaker in it, and we got shattered with that propaganda every day. Well, here's what it was. A little bit of truth, something did happen, but the overall package was really a lie. And so that is what people do when their message is not strong enough to convince people and carry its own weight. They take a little truth and then package it into an emotional lie, and then they try to win you to their cause. And so that's what my blog and my coaching was this month, is we have to listen and look for the truth, and then we have to be discerning and sort out the motivation underneath the total message. And then we have to take a stand to stand for truth and have the courage to do
that. Taking what you just said one step further, and this is both biblical and factual, and one of the biggest hurts today, and again, I think this is what we're living under by Satan, the evil one, trying to separate and destroy us as a country and as a people and as individuals, and that's taking our right away to meet and in our churches. And we can do all the telecommunication that you want, but it's not the fellowship and the feelings. And with that regard, you didn't make, and I'm being very presumptuous, but you didn't make it through the Hanoi Hilton for the time that you were there by yourself, in my opinion. And you go on to explain it a lot, that they could not give you a Bible, they could say whatever they wanted to say, but with the fellowship and camaraderie that you had with the other prisoners, helped get you through it from one day to the next.
Yeah, that's true. Camaraderie and fellowship, I call it community a lot of times in my leadership training, is that without community, resilience goes down. And it's hard to really stay connected with who you are and what your mission is when you're all alone. Because when you're all alone, all your old lies about yourself and others start creeping in, and you start losing perspective of things. And you need to be in a community that can encourage you, but also correct you as you're going along. And so community is very important. And I do think it's a tough situation right now, but it doesn't make sense that it's okay for people to go out and protest side by side with each other, but you can't go to church and sit with 6 foot spacing. It just seems a little bit illogical,
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't heard a good explanation on that one yet. But I do understand that the need to protect our health, but I also understand that people make choices. And, we've had other health issues. We've had many viruses come through before, and this one we don't have a vaccine for. But, we're probably going to end up losing about the same number that we would from the other viruses in our culture. So I don't know. It's just everybody's got to sort that out themselves. I happen to be old, and I'm pretty physical. I mean, I can go out and run and ride my bike and do my 22 push-ups for the veterans every day if I need to. But still, I don't want to expose myself too much. So I do pick and choose on it, but I agree. Getting together with people of your faith is something that's going to be very important in our society.
Well,
I just wanted to mention, going back to, we talked about the leading with honor and the lessons there. There's a chapter on resilience. There's a chapter on bouncing back. It's about bouncing back. And there's another one on fighting to win, and how to do that, being competitive and standing for what you believe in. All of that to say, that book, not at our insistence. In fact, we didn't know about it until the last week of July. But that Leading with Honor book is on Kindle this month for 99 cents. So we're not making any money on it, I can tell you that. And Amazon's not making much. It's just one of their promotions that they pick and choose which books to do that with. And so the Leading with Honor is on Kindle this month for 99 cents for the month of August.
And I would recommend highly everybody downloading it, get it, and read it. And, back to our discussion of what the pandemic's done and the relationships. And I'm not a doctor, don't claim to be, but at the same token, I know how important mental health is to our physical health. And when you've taken away the fellowship and the mental health that you receive by being with your peers, then you're going to lose your physical health as well, no matter what you do. It's if you've got a mental, you're going to bed with worry and waking up with worry, then it's gonna affect your physical health as well. So the sooner we can get back to a clean and good mental health situation, I think we will have overcome the virus and any side effects it might have. And again, that's only my opinion, but I feel very strongly about that.
I think that's right. You know, what we learned in the POW camps was the importance, the power of being connected, and we would risk our lives to connect with somebody who was in isolation, solitary confinement, in another part of the camp or whatever. We would take great risk to get to them and say, man, we're proud of you. Hang in there. You know, you're one of us. We ain't leaving without you, buddy. You're doing great. And those kind of things, which we meant. But we wanted them to know that, you know, they were not alone. And no matter what the enemy tried to do to them, that we were there with them and we were going to stand with them. The other thing, though, is that made such a big difference for us was our leaders who really went through the worst. They didn't have any corner offices and good deals and perks. They went through the worst torture, the most isolation. Our top three leaders there were in solitary confinement they were there 7.5 years. They got there 2 years before I did. But they were in solitary confinement for 4 out of their 7.5 years. Now think about that.
Oh.
Well, they came home and took off and did a great job. Not only did they do a great job there, but they came home and did well. And 2 of them lived to almost 90, and one died earlier at 82 with Alzheimer's. But their example and their encouragement and their authenticity was so powerful for us. And I think that's what we need today is we need people who are good leaders, who are good examples, good role models to take us through these conditions that we're in right now, dealing with the change, dealing with the challenges that we're all facing. We need people that are honest, that tell the truth, that own who they are and own the situation and don't try to spin it. And that's what really spin is ruining our society, and it's in all sides. We just need to deal with the realities, and we don't always know exactly what's going to happen and don't always know exactly the best choice, but we sort it out and make the best choice we can and then move ahead.
You know, we need the title of your book, Leading with Honor. And, you know, it's a sad scenario when you can't say I respect and honor everybody in Congress, and I don't. I can't. We live in the most wonderful country in the world where we can have our own opinions and express them when we go and vote, and yet. You know, I've passed the question by many times or in my own head of the people that are expressing themselves today. I wonder if they went and voted, you know. And I learned a long time ago that, and frankly, I haven't missed any national elections, but I have missed some local elections, and I don't say anything about it if I didn't vote. And I feel very strongly about this. You have no right to complain about anything if you didn't vote and support the candidate that you felt like would do the best job. And we have that, and that's leading with honor. If our country could come back to that in a heartbeat, we'd turn the country around in a heartbeat.
You know, the approval rating of Congress is 17%, and it's been there. It's been under 20% for the last 15 or 20 years. 17%. Think about that. And the reason is, I think, because they're not trustworthy. They are not honorable, consistently doing what's best for the country, and too often what we see them doing is being influenced by money and politics and power. They're afraid they're not going to get reelected. They're afraid they're going to lose power. They're afraid the party won't jump with them. and so they get into things and proceed on things that are just not in the best interest of the country, and people see that. What's interesting, though, is people keep voting them back in. There's no accountability. It's like being a professor and have tenure. There's no accountability. It's like working for the government. It's very difficult to fire a civil service employee.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a joke. Your odds as a civil service employee, your odds are higher of dying of a heart attack at work than of being fired. And when you don't have accountability, people think they can do whatever they want to do, and they're not going to be held accountable. Well, human nature is human nature,
Sure.
If I didn't think there's accountability out there, I'm sure I would have gotten off track a long time ago. I still get off track some, but I correct back quickly. I have people around me to help me with that. But human nature, just look at all the great leaders of the world. I mean, has there ever been a great leader that didn't get off track and do dumb things? No. We're all human beings. So without accountability, it just gets off track and keeps going and keeps going. And,
Well, I think one of the, I know from my standpoint, I'm sorry, because this isn't the way the interview should go. We should be talking about you, what you went through, and I've gotten off track, just as you said, and I apologize to you, Lee. You've got a very important story to tell, and you've written about what you learned out of it, and this is the important thing. And as far as what our politicians are doing today and where we are today, I still have my faith that it will turn around, and that the end game will justify the means. And I think in your book you lay out some very good points about what honor is and what honor isn't. And I think if we ever get to a point that we have honorable candidates running, the country will turn around. And I've been amazed at some of them that have won, and they go to D.C., and what changes them.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think most of the people who get elected are pretty honorable people, but politicians do tend to be very fearful of their position and their name and reputation and so on. But I think most of them get elected are probably pretty good people. But you get up there, and the way the system works in Washington, D.C., is it's just kind of set, and it's hard to break out of that, think about all the junk mail you get every day.
Oh, yeah.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
You get all that junk mail because it comes at a very low cost to mail it. Well, why does it come so low cost? Because there's a direct mail lobby in Washington, D.C. And what do? They pour a lot of money into those congressmen, senators, to keep those prices down, even though the post office runs about a several, I think, $billion debt, but millions of dollars in debt every year. It doesn't pay for itself, and hasn't in many years. So that's the kind of thing. It's kind of the way they operate up there, and it's hard to turn that around when you're a new guy going in. You kind of have to go with the flow, and that's too often what happens. So I wanted to circle back because it has been a little bit negative at times, and you just made a good statement that you believe that we're going to come through this, and I do too, because I do believe there's enough honorable people that people will see the difference between right and wrong, and they will hold people accountable, and that we will be able to survive this, and we'll probably learn a lot from it. I am concerned just about stability and law and order, and that's the one thing that's got to be solved very, very soon, or we're going to be in bad shape. I think we can solve it. I think that everybody's going to get concerned. I think it was the mayor of Portland who's been so anti-police. All of a sudden, their home got threatened, and by the Antifa or one of those groups, and all of a sudden they're concerned about law and order. I think people are going to, of all left and right are going to get concerned about law and order when it threatens them, and I think we'll see some unity coming in from that direction.
You know, this is, and going back to some of your earlier comments, but our country, and I, you and I are the same age, but I'm not sure where all of this came in or came about, but I learned a lesson with my kids in private school. Something happened, and the attitude of the other parents was, well, it didn't happen to my kid, so why do you want to get me involved? And our country, in many ways, till they're on your lawn, if they're on the neighbor's lawn, then it doesn't concern me. If they're on my lawn, now I want my neighbor to help me, you know?
Right.
And we have this attitude until it happens to me, then, well, you must have done something to get them to come stand on your yard or driveway or whatever. When we have to. You made the point, community. Well, I couldn't agree with you more. And neighborhoods have to get to know your neighbor and be ready to act if the occasion arises.
Yeah, there's a lot of power in unity. We've seen that from evil, and now we need to see more of that from good.
Absolutely, very good point.
People standing together, whether they're on the right or on the left, but they're standing together for honor and for our way of life, really. You know.
Absolutely.
And the people who think our way of life is so bad and feel like they need to correct it with violence, we need to show them that's not allowed here.
I think we should. You don't like it here, then leave.
Yeah. One of the things that I've done in just the last 6 weeks, just a few weeks ago, one of my black friends recommended I go and listen to and watch a video online put out by a group at Ohio State or organization related to Ohio State's law school, I think. But it was the whole thing was the letter that Martin Luther King wrote from the Birmingham jail. And it's a very long letter. He had plenty of time. I understand he had plenty of time on his hands because I've been there locked up. But it was a wonderful letter, and we could all benefit from that, seeing what his perspectives were, how his faith played out in that, his love of the country, his love for others, but his courage and willingness to stand for what was right. And that's what he was doing. He was standing for what was right. He was put in jail, battered and bruised, and eventually was assassinated. But, Martin Luther King stood for what was right, and that's what we need all of our American people to just figure out what's right. We, look at the Constitution, look at our way of life, look at your faith, what's right, and let's stand for that.
Right. With that being said, we're going to have to end the conversation. Colonel Lee Ellis, Jr., retired, and he is also in the Georgia Military Veterans Hall of Fame, class of 2014, I believe. And go down, look him up, and we'll be back next week with more of David's picks. Lee, thank you again very much for being on today.
Thank you, David. Great to be with you, and farewell to the audience.
Thank you, sir.
If your health insurance premium is more than your mortgage, Ellen Deal with Ideal Solutions is here to help. Whether you're a small business owner,
still there?
individual, family, or baby boomer, email MAGA45CAG@gmail.com, and I'll respond with 3 easy questions to help you determine if you can get away from Obamacare. As a 20-year veteran of the insurance industry, I'm here to help with all your insurance needs. Email Ellen